Is anyone not happy with what they're discovering?
What do you mean by not happy?
On a train or something.
Yeah.
What was that?
I mean, they're good insights.
They're good. Yeah.
I mean, I know what to improve, but I'm not happy that that's the way it is.
Right. But you're happy to discover it, right? So the question is anyone not happy with this process of discovering? You might not be happy with what you're finding, but are you happy that you're finding it? So just wrapping up for now. You'll have some more time later. You'll also be sharing. Just let me know once you're done and let me know you're with me, and I will begin. Okay. I'm going to share a little bit. I'm going to have a little bit of a lecture, and then there's going to be a partner activity to wrap up before we go down for brunch. So welcome back. Day 6, KotE, YTT. This lecture is, the title of this lecture is The Courage to be Transformed. As we go through this transitional space of the threshold that we're in of entering into the new Lunar New Year, having gotten a whole week of really diving into what the heck are we actually doing? What's the point of all of this? And spending enough time on each of these topics to really get, I feel like we've kind of clarified our definitions, and I really feel that the coherence and the solidarity of all of us kind of moving in that direction. As hard as it can be, I feel that that's happening. Do you guys feel that that's happening? Like we're getting real, right? We're getting real and we're doing it. So the courage to be transformed. This is also going to go a little bit into a lecture on ritual and the ritual process, because we didn't get a chance to really dive into that so much. We talked about the Duni, but I didn't really cover ritual technology and the technology of that. We did talk about Robert Moore the other day and what he says about the archetype of initiation, which was super cool. I felt like that was really landing with you guys, and I'm gonna try to bridge some concepts here, and so I'll do my best to share what's coming through me now in this moment. And so I just ask that you remain present with me and remain curious, and I'm gonna be investigating this topic with you guys. So please hold any questions and just write them down for after, please. So Winston Churchill said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." And I was just like, that was in my Insight Timer app the other morning, and I was just like, whoa, like, especially with you guys going into silence next week. So I felt like it was a useful quote along with the idea of courage. And so I'm going to just drop a few these are like one-liners. These are just kind of like things to kind of put in the space, and we're going to try to constellate them here. The first thing that I'll say is that different things work for different people, and different patterns may be required at different times. I'll say that again. Different things work for different people, and different patterns may be required at different times. So the tools, the fundamental mission remains the same. So the tools are relatively the same, because we have the direction that we're trying to go in, and then knowing how to use the tools to assist us, because then the right thing to do for us is what's going to help transport our soul to its next level of development. I say that what is effective is what will help transport the soul to the next higher stage of development. And so we really need to know what is what I'm doing effective. That's the question always. Is what I'm doing effective? Is it working? Do you guys feel what we're doing is working for you? On many levels, right? Yes, Tallulah.
I found it really helpful in one of the courses where you said you did a spiritual, you do like a spiritual detective.
Spiritual detective.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
For yourself.
For myself.
For ourselves.
For ourselves, yes.
To check if it's working.
Exactly. And it's like every time you come to the mat, every time you come and you sit on your seat and you prepare for another Kriya, the number one thing, remember curiosity. Number one thing is curiosity. But really, honestly, like looking, it's like, is this shit helping me or not? Is it helping me? So we examine the function of the idea or the concept. And we really want to understand, what does it mean? Not cognitively, but like, what does it mean for me? Like, what is ahimsa for me? And then what is and that's basically, what is its relative value to us personally? Because the spiritual ideals they're just these awesome, lofty spiritual ideals, like any ideal, until we ground it and we bring it in and we really be with it, really examine it. Like, is my belief that we're all one actually helping me achieve oneness? Or when I see someone who doesn't believe that we're all one, and I'm like, oh, you don't believe that we're all one? How could you not believe we're all one? I just lost the whole point. Because I didn't examine that concept deep enough for myself. And so my job is to present a framework for you all and to encourage you, and also this goes for you as teachers, to present a framework to others and then to encourage people to work with key ideas and discover useful patterns for them. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm presenting key ideas and principles and frameworks and doing my best to support you in discovering what is useful for you. And I'm putting everything on the table so that you guys can really connect to some of it, not other parts, probably, I don't know. But this is also true in your coaching and teaching and facilitation practice. Present the framework, encourage the experiment to take place, create the container, do it safely, and then see what happens. The shadow is what you cannot see. You can't see it. By definition, it's the shadow. That's also why I love sitting in a circle, because you can see behind me and I can't see behind me. So, and the same thing with everyone else. We all can see behind the person across from us, but they can't see behind them. So we are supporting each other in seeing all parts of ourselves. That's the sacred geometry. That's why I'm making it a big deal about how we arrange our mats. The question then is, and I've been doing this a lot, how to be practical, not abstract. How do we be practical about this stuff? And again, that's going back to, what are we trying to do? Is it effective? Is it working? That line of question. So those are just some ideas that I'm going to put in the space as we transition into this talk on the courage to be transformed. And along with this talk, so I'm bringing in some Robert Moore stuff and depth psychology here, and I'll also layering in ritual and the ritual process. We're crossing a threshold today, the Lunar New Year. Raise your hand if you want this upcoming year, this new cycle of zodiac and new energy, if you want it to be the exact same as your previous year. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you want it to be maybe a little different, a little upgraded. We're all going through a transformation. We're all going through a threshold. So understanding this process and really studying it and seeing the science behind it can help us. That's what I'm getting at. And so these are just some notes from a lecture that I was listening to with Robert Moore, and I was just jotting down some of his key ideas because I thought it was really important to this lecture today with you all. And the one thing that I want to put in the space that I think is really important is the concept of containment, because we're going to go in next week, starting tomorrow. we're going to be in our little container, our little cauldron. And everything that I put in the space here is to support that cauldron to get really hot. So that whatever you want to put in your cauldron, you can turn it into the recipe that's going to be delicious for you in your life. He says that containment is so important for transformative space to occur and deep change in the personality, because the facilitation of a holding environment that can hold individuals and groups, this holding environment, this container, and calling in all the energies that are supporting us and doing all these rituals and prayers and making offerings and calling in the directions and honoring the elements and ancestors, all of that is to create an energetic container for us so that we can tolerate the terror of change. Because change, real change, deep changes it's scary. It's a scary process because part of us has to literally die. So the better environment you can make for your students in terms of this way, even if it's just a yoga class that's 60 minutes long, the more you're aware of the architecture. Like there's an energetic architecture. Outside of the physical space, there's an energetic architecture. And you will be able to create that space just from your presence. Just by knowing this. Containment. Making it safe. So that people can tolerate the terror of change. Let me just skip to another section of my notes here. Thank you for your patience. How to be practical. Okay. The courage to be transformed. A lot of what we talk about with Hatha Yoga and the physical aspect of this, right? There's a spiritual dimension, which is what's happening in your inner world as you're doing this. And that's entirely up to you. I can provide some guidance, but it's 100% up to you how you arrange your inner environment to go through this process, and your attitude and the mood that you have, all of those things. Like I can't do anything about that. I can provide the container and say, do this technique, do this, because that's just the building blocks. But then what happens internally that's the spiritual process. And that is how we build the cup. There's a lot of talk in the myth about building the cup and strengthening the cup. Because when we have a strong cup, we can hold spiritual energy. If our cup isn't strong, then when spiritual energy comes in, or we have inspiration or insight, that energy comes in and then it leaks out. And so our practice, our sadhana, is our holding environment for ourselves. It's how we create this ritual process in our daily life so that we can continue strengthening this cup for ourselves. Robert Morris says this is a quote from him that I love. He says, "We can imagine that we can be more than we are." And that just landed. I was like, whoa. We can imagine we can be more than we are. And like we were talking about the other day with his 4 archetypes, warrior, magician, king, lover. I just want to get a feel in the room just to hear where you guys land with this. Raise your hand if you're in the king or queen category. You feel that that's where you're resonating right now, currently. There's no wrong answer. Oh, yeah, good question. Let's say where our work is, where we could use work. Cool. And yeah. And then what about the warrior? Using work, can use work. Yes, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, keep my hand.
What about the lover? I feel like you guys are all lovers. Yeah. Really? Owen? Jen? Yeah. Okay. I'm not judging. I feel the same. I'm like, yeah, I could use more leather. What about mage? More mage. Magician. You guys are all magicians. Yeah, Michelle. Self-realization, getting that constellation, right? So our transformative process is intentional. We know where we're going, or at least we have an idea that we're like, oh, I'm acknowledging in myself, and I'm seeing the consequences of this not being properly in balance in myself because I'm self-reflecting. I'm taking the time to really get honest with myself and my journaling and then just observing my life. Then your transformative process is, one, it's way more intentional. You're not just doing it for fun. Like, who would do this for fun? I mean, yes, it's so much fun. I would too. But yeah, totally. It's fun and it's meaningful because we know why. So another question is, just a show of hands, are you a person that relates well to form, structure, discipline? Raise your hand. Okay. Are you a person that relates better to the flow and the change? Yeah. So then also another question is, are you dominated by chaos? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. So creating a strong cup that can hold spiritual energy, because these processes are meant to help us to prevent the power of the human psyche from destroying us, because we are connected to power, everybody. And that power, if it's unregulated, will just bleh. Y'all know what I'm talking about. This is Shakti and Shiva. Dynamism. Who knows what dynamism would be? What?
Oh, I thought we were just raising our hands again.
Okay, so Shakti and Shiva. Which one is Shakti? Dynamism. And then which one is form, structure? Shiva.
What's the first word? What are you calling the...
Dynamism. Dynamism.
For like the 5-star?
Dynamic?
Yeah.
For like the sensory body?
Yes. This is also why in Tantra, and we'll get to Kundalini, they worshipped the goddess. They worshipped her. They wanted to get so in a good relationship with her because they knew that she could completely rearrange your shit. Completely. And she didn't care about your preferences. She just wanted you to be in alignment with life. And the form of her that really doesn't care about your preferences and just wants you to be in alignment with life, that's Kali or Durga. She's ready to just go, you've been misbehaving and you know it, and we're now in relationship, and so there's no avoiding this. Flop. It's immense compassion, you guys. It is the most benevolent form of the mother, who loves you so much that she's willing to force you to confront your shadow so you stop carrying that shit with you. It is massive, massive compassion. Try to embody that in someone that you love. That's your inner Kali. How difficult is that when someone's really not doing things the way that you feel deep down, like this person's really like kind of fucking up. And I need to have that talk with them. Ooh, that takes courage, man. And to do it with love, there's your Kali. That's you being like, you know what? No one else is going to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you this. Man, I want to be surrounded by people like that. Do you want to be surrounded by people like that? Think about how much faster we would get to the goal if all of our friends were just like, hey, let's sit down, let's talk about this. I'm noticing this. You're noticing it, but you're hiding from it. And then all of a sudden you have two pairs of eyes on it with love, and it starts to move. It's beautiful. So the question is, if I were to optimize, this is for you, if I were to optimize, where would I allocate more energy towards? Which polarity?
One more weekend right
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just a question. And then we can go into talking a little bit about individuation. Let me see here. Because we want to talk about accessing sacred energy, and which relates to rituals. So I'm trying to find a segue here. I'm just looking at my notes again. I'm like constellating a couple things because I feel like we're on the topic.
Can you read the question one more time?
If I were to optimize in my life, where would I allocate energy towards? If I have immense resistance to form, but I am so going with the flow, would optimizing my life look like continue going with the flow and putting energy in that direction? Or optimizing mean allocating some energy towards form and structure? Yes.
So open to being a bit of both.
Oh yeah, totally. And being specific too. You know what I mean?
Are we answering this question?
No, it's just a, yeah. So the courage to be means that you take a stand against all those things that are trying to destroy you. Where do those things exist? In us. There's nothing out there that wants to get you. On an ultimate level, on an absolute level. So taking a stand against those things that are trying to take apart your life. It's freaking big. If you don't feel connected enough to your center, which is where your power is from, Robert Moore calls it your POB, your power of being. If we don't feel connected to that, he says that, and this is unconscious, we assume a vampiric stance, which means that we look for that energy in others and we try to get it from them. And this will happen to you as teachers. People who are disconnected from themselves will come to you and be like, you have what I want. Give me. And you're going to be like, oh, it feels so weird. And you're going to have to figure out how to point that person back to themselves with courage and compassion, but also really lift them up so that process, because that's not just happening between you and them, it's happening in all their relationships. And you're because you're identifying it, you're like, oh, okay, like I see what's happening. It feels icky, but I have a responsibility for this person if I choose to take that on. These are the people who are not connected to their center. They idealize. They don't admire you. They put you up there, and they idealize. It's an idealization, not true admiration. True admiration is you in your center, acknowledging a person for how beautiful they are with nothing else. You don't need anything from them. It's just witnessing beauty and grace, and you're like, wow, awesome, thank you. Because if that POB isn't constellated correctly, if your archetypes aren't constellated correctly, then they exist outside of you and you get them in other places. This is the basis for codependent relationships. So when someone cannot move through their thing, remember I kept talking about, like, what's your thing? What are you working on? What do you need to do? What did you come here for? What are you trying to get? What are you trying to go home with? How are you trying to change? I'm just trying to continue to to put the ball in your court. But if someone cannot move through their thing, or they don't have the energy to face their work, then basically they find something to do which they think is a good idea, but it's actually taking them away from their life path. I'll repeat that again. This is where despair, this is the phenomenology of despair and discouragement. When we set out on the spiritual path and we decide, oh, I really need to change this about myself, right? Remember preliminary space before in the archetype of initiation on that lecture, the preliminary space, before we admit that we know something about ourselves. As soon as we identify the thing, that's our work, our true, authentic, this is mine, I take responsibility for it. If I don't have the energy to face that, then I'm going to look for something else that's a good idea that I think, but really I don't acknowledge on a deeper level the truth of it. I just think it's a good idea because I'm avoiding the real work. So if someone doesn't have the energy to move through their thing, to face their work, then we'll find something to do which appears to be a good idea, but it's actually taking you from your life path. And so we must create boundaries with our own vampiric energy, with ourself, because that is a form of our own energy siphoning out into what is the good idea. Again, I'm trying to, the concept that we're working on is what's truly effective. That's the concept. That's the overarching concept. What's truly effective? How to really transform. And so these are from Robert Moore. These are the elements of the transformative process. We talked about the elements of initiation. These are the elements of the transformative process. I'm going to give you 4, okay? And we'll talk about them. You guys ready for number 1? Does anyone want to just throw out what would be the first step in the transformative process? What do you think?
Realizing you need to change something?
Yes. Combination of all those, actually. It's the assessment. He calls it the diagnosis. What is the situation? What's the situation? Diagnosis, number 1. Basically, you locate where the front is in your personal inner battlefield. Where do you need to allocate resources to? Where's the battle taking place, truly? Is it out there somewhere? Or is it somewhere else? That way you have a real assessment. He says that that's the magician energy. Number 2, the vision. Once you have your diagnosis, you need your vision. Where do you want to or need to go? That's your king or queen. Establishing order in the kingdom or queendom. Where do you need to go? What's your vision? You guys have been doing this all week. Number 3, on the elements of the transformative process, courage. You need courage on this path. It's not easy. It's terrifying, actually. Which is why few people will really commit and go all the way through, from what I've seen. You need courage to take action. That's your warrior. We've been working on that one. Know where you're going. Number 4, energy. You need the energy to fuel the courage. That comes from your lover. He, she, it. That's your lover. That's your bhakti. That's when you show up to your mat and you're like, where's my fire today? It might be like a tiny little flame, but connecting to that fire, that's, and then feeding that.
So number 2 is the king queen.
Correct. So we have diagnosis, magician. 2, vision, which is king/queen. 3, courage, which is warrior. 4, energy, which is lover. That's true for all systems. If you were to study the scientific process of transformation, those are the steps, according to Robert Moore. Number 1, with the diagnosis, you've got to create the map. He says that sometimes we think we're more free than we are. And number 2, with the vision in the king or queen, he says, I love this. He goes, psychological theories don't connect you to your power of being. They're just thoughts. They don't actually really change anything. That's why you got to do stuff. You got to do the kriya. You got to do the warrior. You have to actually apply the kriya. We'll get to kriya tomorrow. Yes, Tallulah. Psychological theories do not connect you to your POB, your power of being, to your center. Number 3, with courage in the warrior, he says, without courage, it's really freaking hard to face the truth about yourself. Because when you think about what, bless you, he says, when you think about what you might become, if you actually do the work that you know you must do, it overwhelms you. It's scary. To see what's possible for you, I don't know, I'll speak for myself. When I think about what's possible for me, I kind of like do that a little bit. I'm like, oh. I've gotten better at it, which is why I'm sitting here talking to you all, but it wasn't always like that. It was, and there's still like, there's always the next stage of the journey, you know? I'm on the same exact path as all of you. We're all at the same level of this game, and there's the same process, as far as I can tell. So you have to have, and then with the energy, you must have that or you won't have the courage, obviously. If your life is flooded by your lover archetype, most of you guys, then, which means that you're not able to take a stand with courage, then your life becomes unstable because you have a bunch of energy. The lover is the energy, but your warrior isn't constellated correctly to organize and focus that energy. So you're like, like with everything's awesome. But then when it comes time to do the thing you really want to do, you're like, So you have the energy to do lots of cool things, but that is still missing. So there's an instability. Speed is the way of preventing ourselves from having to deal with something we do not want to face. Speed is the way that we prevent ourselves from having to deal with something we do not want to face. That's why I kept saying, slow down. What were we doing in Warrior 1? I was like, what does it feel like if you slow down? Is there something that you're not wanting to feel? Of preventing ourselves from having to deal with something we do not want to face. Right? Yeah, it's profound. Wow. Okay, so let me see. Yeah. I'm going to wrap up this little constellation of concepts. Let's see here. I felt like it was a hot topic the other day when we got on to Robert Moore stuff, so I'm trying to bring all the notes together. This wasn't planned. This wasn't part of the lecture, but it feels super relevant. Is it landing for you guys?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, here's some of the last things that I'll say that I think are important here. He says, either you're conscious of these archetypes, the warrior, the lover, the king, queen, the magician. You're either conscious of them or you're acting them out unconsciously. For example, a masochistic person is a person who's trying to be enough for their family, which means they're acting out the archetype unconsciously. Like self-harming. Yeah, because their boundaries aren't clear with themselves, so they're giving away their energy to the point of being depleted, actually being harmed in their own energy, and then they have to go and then they get mad at their family for taking too much of their energy, and it's like, whoa. That's a setup. So that is the archetype being acted out unconsciously. Does that make sense?
Which archetype?
I would say the warrior.
Is that like an imbalanced warrior?
Yeah.
Fighting for the wrong reason.
Fighting for the wrong reason. Not knowing where the front is. Not knowing where the front is. He says, I was studying his lectures on the archetype, the initiations for men, because I really wanted to understand what went through with men. I'm going to replace some of the men thing and just speak universally, because there's women here, obviously. And with something he says, he's like, I'm replacing men, and I'm just saying spiritual warriors. You guys identify as a spiritual warrior?
Yes.
Spiritual warriors do what is necessary, not because they like the sacrifice, but they do it for the cosmos. Because the idea is that cosmos, as in all of life, and self are not separate. That we do what's necessary because we understand as individuals we are part of everything else. So it's not that we're doing it, we're doing it out of that knowledge. It's not like I'm sacrificing for Does that make sense? Does that land for you guys? I feel like maybe we could unpack that one a little more. Let me see what else I have. It's like selflessness. It says there's a modern dysfunction that we can become mature adults without giving a shit about the world. That is not maturity. It's not maturity, in my opinion. Maybe you agree. And so the king/queen will sacrifice for order and for others to live. But if we do that unconsciously, it becomes masochistic. So what does that look like? That means getting up and doing your sadhana in the morning. You're doing it for you, but you're doing it for everyone else too. And you're not going out on this corner of the street and telling anybody about it, because you know that just by doing it is the reward. Just taking the right step in the right direction is its own reward. Most people stay away from archetypes unconsciously, because when you really constellate properly with them, you lose your individual will. Meaning your preference for what you're going to do with your life, sorry, God's taking over. You're in the passenger seat now. So people avoid this because they want to keep their little sense of self and their things a certain way that they want them, and it's like, this is my life. And it's like, actually, this is life's life. What a gift. And that's like we're overwhelmed with thinking about our power. So and then by being overwhelmed thinking about our power, we are simultaneously jealous when we see people in theirs, and angry with ourselves for not being there, because we projected it out. Do you guys relate to that one? Yeah. That one's a bummer. We're afraid of our power because we will become overwhelmed with responsibility. If your warrior archetype is activated, but your king or queen is shut down, you will have a lot of passion and energy, but you'll be chaotic. Same thing with the lover. I love this quote from him. He says, creating cosmos out of chaos is not sexy.
Creating cosmos.
Out of chaos is not sexy. Because you have to set shit right in your community. First of all, you have to set shit right in yourself. Then you set shit right in your house. And that happens in your community. And the more, there's just layers to it. And eventually it's like, oh, wow, I'm responsible for every single thing that I see. That is what it means to be a king or a queen. I'm responsible for everything that I see. I am doing my best to uphold the integrity of the life that I am seeing around me. Massive responsibility. Massive. Creating and doing that is not sexy. It's not glorious. Sometimes it's not fun. It takes a lot of personal sacrifice, getting over yourself. He says, if you have a sense that you own the planet, it is impossible to muster enough stewardship to care for it. And a lot of people are walking around like they own the planet or they whatever. We don't own this planet. We are here to steward her. And stewarding, the word stewarding, to help the most potential embody itself. What does it mean to be a steward? To help the most potential embody itself. Just like if you have kids, you're stewarding that soul into the human body. To help the most potential in that new human life embody itself.
To help one more time.
Most potential embody itself. I love this one. I think this will be the last thing I say, and then we're going to break into groups and talk a little bit. Oh, no, I have... You guys okay for just a little more? Yeah. Okay, this is landing, right?
Yes.
He says, any leader that has signed on to be a leader is automatically a steward. However, some leaders don't have the circuitry to actually be stewards, which is a bummer, but it's just the case. And he says, I put a star and I circled this because I thought it was we were talking about it the other day with Jen, and we were all talking about it, but it says narcissism happens when someone who had stewardship over you didn't follow through. Narcissism happens when someone who had stewardship over you didn't follow through.
Okay.
We're all just trying to get our needs met. I'm trying to get my needs met. Maybe you are too. If you have all your needs met, come talk to me. Help me out. So then this is a question that we're going to get into tomorrow, because we'll enter into the ritual space of noble silence and digital detox. But the question that I'll have you write down and we'll follow up is just how to be a steward of who you are. How to help the most potential in yourself manifest itself. How do you protect that divine inspiration and guidance? How to be a steward of who you are. You need inner structurization to contain your energy and direct it effectively. You need inner structurization to contain your energy and direct it effectively. That's why the principles are so helpful. That's why the yamas and the niyamas are so helpful. That's why the sadhana is so helpful. It's a structurization process. Yes, Audrey.
Joanna shared something with me that on like the first day that has stuck with me this whole time.
Yep.
She said that structure was like banks of a river.
Yes.
And if there weren't banks of the river, the water couldn't flow properly and just disperse.
Exactly.
Yep.
And the deeper and the more strong banks you have when a storm comes, guess where that water goes? Right where you're directing it. But if you have a shallow riverbank, and how do you think you make the riverbank just a little bit deeper? Every dang brick. Every brick you put on the, the tapas. It's just making it a little deeper, opening the channel a little more. The Duni, for me, like my first 100 Dunis, I was like, what am I trying to do? You know, like I know something's happening, but what am I doing? Home biter, biter. I'm just like, it feels good. Something seems to be happening. And over time, the grooves, I sit down there and I'm transported. And it's just me and the fire, and I'm in a process. And like I'm offloading and emptying out and releasing, and you may already be feeling that. We're going to get a chance to break into pairs here in a moment to talk about that, because I want you guys to process together. But I will wrap up here with this last one here, because we're talking about leadership also, right? And so if we fail to connect to the connection that we have to the center that is beyond the I, if we fail to make the connection to the center beyond the I, then it can become difficult, if not impossible, to have the courage to properly individuate, to properly move in the direction that we are called to go. Just like if you're asked to step up and lead and you can do so without anxiety, you probably have a healthily constellated royal energy, king or queen. But if, on the other hand, if you've been told no in your developmental journey, which probably happened to all of us to some extent, then you may be uncomfortable to lead. Why? We take refuge in thinking that we are not smart. We take refuge in thinking that we're not enough. We find safety in that.
So it sounds awful, but it's true.
Right. Because it's confronting what we know. And so some folks fear confrontation, even if something comes up and needs to be engaged with. We find a way to detach and not engage. We look the other way. It's easier. It's comfortable. Sergio did a fantastic job, did he not, in the Sweat Lodge? Not engaging. He stayed with all of us through that whole process in a beautiful way. Because he was there. He was present. He had a good, I feel like Sergio has a really well constellated sense of self. Right? His lover was so present. His warrior was present. His king was present. His magician was present. He was there. And that's what it means to be all there. Fully embodied. All of you are present. All parts. That's why I'm getting you to practice all parts. Clearing out each of the chakras step by step. So this all matters, bless you. If you're camped out in just one or two of these systems, like lover and magician, then you'll get a sense for why you are ambivalent towards development. Because to grow, you have to go through a period of anxiety, of change that is scary, and that the uncertainty. And it's not that the familiar does not cause our anxiety to spike. It's what is different causes our anxiety to spike. So as soon as we're experiencing anxiety, it's a good indicator of something coming up. We need to connect to spirit. We need to connect to the center beyond the I. And this is a dynamic connection to the spirit, or the power of being that Robert Moore talks about. It's the POB, the power of being. It's not the I, because if it was the I, you'll settle with the I and never fully optimize. And he says very explicitly, do not reduce spirituality to psychology. People do that all the time. Just studying the yamas and the niyamas is not enough.
Was he a yogi?
I would say definitely, but probably wouldn't call himself that. Yeah.
Wouldn't call himself what?
A yogi. Okay, last thing here, and then I'm going to have you guys break in groups and do a little partner exercise. We talked about Tantra, and I'm going to just repeat some things just as a review for Tantra. This is from Dr. Svoboda. Dr. Svoboda is a phenomenal scholar, practitioner, a legit wizard. He has amazing books and a lot of resources for authentic teachings in the category of Tantra, of the Vedas, of different aspects of yoga. He went to India in, I think, 1972 or something like that, and was the first Westerner to graduate from an Ayurvedic college. Before that, they didn't let any non-Indians in. And so well, there's a long story there, but he's just an exceptional human being and has a lot of really good things to say. I would recommend studying his work. He says, what did you guys pick up from the lecture on Tantra? Just real fast, what did you receive? Some of the things that you heard there. What is Tantra?
Worshipping the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Experimenting.
A tool for expansion.
Excuse me? A tool for expansion. Yeah, tool for expansion, experimenting, worshiping the body. Willow, one more. Inclusiveness. Yeah. I love this. He says, Tantra is a process for transformation. If you embark on this process and it is successful, the results will be a different you. You won't be the same you that came into this on day one. It's designed in that way. And hopefully you signed up for that. The purpose of Tantra is to perform purposeful actions to generate specific results. I'm repeating this now because it's all related to our duni, the collective duni of this 3-week experience, which is its own sacred fire. That we are performing purposeful actions to generate specific results. You guys feel that? Good. Great. All right, I just gave you guys the download of like 2 months of nonstop study.
Thank you.
Of this guy's work. Because when this, yeah, right? The courage to be transformed. When this opportunity presented itself to me, because everything is an opportunity presenting itself to you. I was presented with the vision for KotE, YTT in July in a duni that I was doing, and I was given the vision for this training, and it terrified me. It's one, as soon as I accepted the vision, because sometimes spirit comes and gives you the whisper, and then you're like, not today. Or you try to negotiate, like, can we just do like maybe like a week long with like 8 people for half as much, You're like trying to and it was just like so clear for me. And as soon as I accepted the vision, it came with the steps that I needed to follow, which it was a lot of work, obviously, but it's just to say that this is all a dream, right? What we're doing here is a dream. And you all also have a dream. And if you don't, I encourage you to dream, because it's the Creator's divine wish that you dream to manifest through you the life that is your highest aspiration, the thing that's calling you. Whether or not you agree with that statement is kind of irrelevant, because I would argue that it's actually already happening, that we're all dreaming anyways, and that our dream is coming into form. You dreamed this too. This was your dream also. Thank you for dreaming with me. And so those are the steps of going through the dream that we're talking about. Okay, turn to page 160 in your book. Thank you for that. That was awesome. Oh, I remember what I was going to say about that. when the dream presented itself to me, all of a sudden Robert Moore came on my horizon, like somehow on YouTube, and I just watched every single one of his lectures. And I was just like, this is exactly what these people need to know, because it's what I need to know. So I just went and I what's that?
This summer?
From like July until November, basically.
Did he like publish a book right around then?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think it seemed like a
Yeah.
media tour.
Yeah, he's dope. Okay, so you're in the technology of ritual.
159.
159, excuse me. Please read the technology of ritual, and when you're complete with that, it should kind of encapsulate some of the experiences that you've been having and some of this lecture. And once you are complete reading that and underlining things that stand out to you, you have a space for notes. You can go ahead and take notes.